Who will LGBTQIA plus New Yorkers be supporting in the upcoming mayoral election? Well, with insight straight from the latest forum, we're going to find out on this episode of Not Suitable for Democracy. Welcome to Not Suitable for Democracy. I'm your host, Nick, and today we're kicking off Pride Month with a very special episode. We're going to be focusing on the New York City mayoral candidates running in the Democratic primary for the upcoming election. Now, most recently, this past weekend, there was a Queers for Action forum where not all, but 6 of the candidates participated in a forum to talk about the issues facing the LGBTQIA plus community in New York City. Now, this is a very important election coming up where there are so many issues at stake. But most importantly, this is a chance for us to elect a new leader, whereas we know our current mayor is currently polling at 19% approval rating. Yeah, that's horrible. And he is a Democrat. So just saying, basically, his performance over the past 4 years have proved not worthy of re-election, where Mayor Adams is currently running in the general election. He totally skipped the Democratic primary because he is very unpopular right now. So we need to elect a new leader with a vision, with courage, and someone who will get the job done for all New Yorkers. But in this particular case, we're focusing on LGBTQIA plus issues. So, what happened at this forum? Now, the forum was hosted this past Saturday on May 31st, which was my birthday, yay. Also at the Red Eye for New York Queer Bar. Now, with that said, we had all of the candidates were invited to the forum, but only 6 participated. So, shout out to Michael Blake, Adrienne Adams, Scott Stringer, Zohran Mamdani, Brad Lander, and Jessica Ramos. All 6 of those candidates participated in the forum that was hosted by Queers for Action. But before we jump into that, just some context on Queers for Action. They were formerly known as Queers for Kamala. It was a, true grassroots effort started by a few folks who wanted to galvanize the queer community to truly support the next president of the United States, which actually formed shortly after Biden dropped out and Harris became the nominee. So with that said, Queers for Kamala did really important work. I was very proud to be a part of that group as a volunteer and an organizer for a short period of time. I helped out in support of their email program, the email newsletter, also leading some of the meetings and making sure that we could deliver and engage more LGBTQ folks, not just from New York City, but nationally, around the country. So with that said, was really able to get a hands-on approach, got to meet a lot of the organizers, even got to coordinate one of their organizing calls, which was pretty cool. And then lastly, the most important part is that they were doing the work, sending several buses down from New York City to Pennsylvania. So shout out to the organizers who are keeping the political activism alive and well and put on the very first Queers for Action forum for New York City's mayoral primary. So very exciting stuff, and I was very fortunate to attend the event on Saturday, May 31st. I had my fellow organizer friends join me, and it was really great to be present, learn a lot, and just, really take it all in as to who has the vision, the courage, the policy, and the experience to really deliver for LGBTQ plus New Yorkers. With that said, I was really impressed with how the overall event played out. Most importantly, the substance and the conversation and the discussions that were had were definitely key. And I have to say, A+ to getting some good ideas not only discussed, possibly championed, but even getting a feel for a a good comparison between the candidates. I really enjoyed that. The format of the forum was separated into two groups. First group had 3 candidates, and the second group had 3 candidates. And this was all hosted by Peppermint. She is very well known in terms of her drag persona. She's made the rounds in entertainment. I actually recently was watching her on Survival of the Thickest, where she had a pretty cool role, and she actually got married on the show. So with that said, really great to see, not only a strong media presence, but, a Black trans woman being very vocal and politically active, and also just like on stage with our New York City mayoral candidates, getting the word out and discussing LGBTQIA plus policy. So being present for that was a great experience. So with that said, she hosted and she moderated, and I really enjoyed the format. I'm going to share some clips. First time doing that, so bear with me for how you may consume the media, right? Things you're trying to understand for each candidate. And to be fair, this was like a 2-hour-long forum, so I'm not going to be sharing everything, but there is a link to the full video footage, so you're more than welcome to check that out. I'll post it online so you can see the entire forum for yourself if you choose to. So, with that said, 2 groups. First group of 3 included Michael Blake, Adrienne Adams, and Brad Lander. Those were the first 3 candidates to be asked questions by Peppermint. I think they all did a great job. And one question from the polling that people may be asking, well, Brad Lander has a lot of experience, but why is he not polling higher? To be very frank, just by watching the first round of these 3 candidates talk about the issues, it became very clear why Lander is not polling higher. To be very frank, I believe his delivery is very focused on policy and institutional knowledge, which is very valuable, but the tone and the, I don't want to say lack of enthusiasm, but there's just not a level of excitement when he's speaking that I think is not resonating with the voters, right? You can watch the forum yourself. You can see how in the very first question, they're asked to introduce themselves in 1 minute. And you can see very quickly how Michael Blake and Adrienne Adams had similar styles where they were more engaging and exciting. They turned on the charm. Whereas Brad Lander, not exactly the same intro, which was fine. It doesn't have to be the same. But his focused on all of his legislative or record of accomplishments, which is something you do want to hear. So I'm going to share the clips, and you'll be able to determine for yourselves how each candidate fared, right? So first, let's watch Michael Blake as he introduces himself in a New York Minute.
Here to tell us why they believe that they are the best to protect and fight for queer and trans rights in New York City, please welcome, giving us a 2-minute 1 minute moment, a 1 minute, a 30-second, a 15-second, y'all probably already know, so we ain't gonna say it. Giving us a 1 minute moment on why they believe they are the best candidate to do so. Please welcome Michael Blake, former assembly member from the Bronx and Obama White House.
What's going on, everybody? How we doing today? I don't know if I've ever been in a space where Peppermint said you'd be nervous. I don't believe that at all. I'm just gonna say that right now. Thank y'all for creating space for everyone for the first time that you might be seeing me. My name is Michael Blake. I served in the Assembly for 6 years. Before that, I worked for President Obama for 7 years. We were part of the team on everything from same-sex marriage to making sure we were fighting for affordable care rights. The reason why I'm running for mayor is because we have to change the game. The mayor is a joke. He's a clown. He's not trying to fight for us right now. And there are things that we can do that are very specific. We have to make sure in this Trump environment that we create spaces as safe havens so that you don't have those that are attacking our LGBT community in any regard. Let's be clear that trans community, in particular trans of color, are being disrespected and attacked at every single. Again, we are standing up in very practical ways. We have to be clear that an employer that will discriminate, we will take their contract and we will hold them accountable. It is about being understanding that we are serious about this. So if you want to be focused on everything from affordability to changing the game and fighting against Donald Trump, my name is Michael Blake. I'm the handsome Jamaican in the room, and I'm asking to be your mayor right now. Let's go, everybody.
Hey, that is how you do a minute. That's a good minute. I like that. That's a New York minute. If you
Now that was a New York minute. Really great to see Michael Blake, really fighting for the trans community, especially incorporating that into his intro. So the fact that he even, did get the opportunity to work on same-sex marriage in the Obama administration does say a lot. So I was happy to hear that he was also with that joke at the end being the most handsome Jamaican man in the room. Good for him. I appreciate the humor. And, that said, I think he had a really good intro to really showcase himself. So I give him credit for that. Now, let's go to Adrienne Adams and see how she introduced herself.
Here to tell us why she thinks she's the best candidate to protect and fight for LGBTQ plus New Yorkers. Give it up for Adrienne Williams. Adrienne Adams, the first Black woman speaker of the City Council. Hello! Currently representing District 28 in Jamaica, Queens.
Thank you so much, Miss Peppermint!
Oh, wait, don't start the time until the applause has gone down.
I reclaim. It is my absolute pleasure and joy to be with you all today. Thank you so much for this amazing forum. You deserve it. And do take account of who is here for you. My name is Adrienne Adams, and I do lead the most diverse city council in the history of the city of New York with the strongest LGBTQIA caucus that the city has ever seen. Strong and proud. I come from the middle-class family raised with union hands. I know what it is to be an everyday New Yorker because I am an everyday New Yorker. I'm a mother and a grandmother wanting the same thing that all of you want. Safety, affordability, and a place to be proud of, which is something that is a little on shaky ground right now. I have been in the private sector, in corporate America. I have also been a flight attendant. Yeah, I can save your life in 90 seconds still. And now into public life in the city council. In public life in the city council, I have led the city council for almost 4 years, very, very proudly. And with your interests at heart and at mind and spirit, you are a priority for me, as you always have been as mayor. You will continue to be that priority for me.
All right.
Now, what you might notice is that while Adrienne Adams was probably really the sassiest, the funniest, the most engaging, right? She definitely had that charm and really turned it on in the room. And that energy was palpable, and I think everyone in the room felt that. However, my critique there is if you listen closely, she doesn't exactly share anything about any LGBTQIA plus accomplishments that she's done. She does mention the LGBTQIA plus caucus of the city council, and it is strong, very strong. But that's thanks to leaders like Eric Botcher and Tiffany Caban, my city council member, who are really stick their necks out and really fighting back and calling things out, through the media, bully pulpit, whenever they have an opportunity, and really championing queer rights. So as much as it's those are the individual queer members or that make it strong, while it is under Speaker Adams' leadership, I wouldn't necessarily say that's her accomplishment per se, right? So not excited by the answer in the same way that I think her delivery was exciting. But again, I give her credit for obviously being here, and with her platform, I'm sure she'll be angling herself in a way to champion queer rights. So with all of that said, I think having those three together was very productive. All of their styles and kind of their strengths all kind of played well. And they all had really great answers. Now, this clip from Brad Lander, I think, was his strongest answer. It's not necessarily an introduction about himself, but it actually ties into healthcare. Now, as you may be familiar, gender-affirming care is one of the top issues amongst the trans community, right? Their gender-affirming care is under attack, specifically from the Trump administration, but more recently from NYU Langone, who has, unilaterally decided to not support gender-affirming care after the Trump administration, gave their illegal executive order with gender-affirming care. So, with that said, here's Brad Lander's solution and how he plans on tackling that issue.
Controller Lander.
First, I'm going to fund and strengthen the City Commission on Human Rights to enforce the city's human rights law, which requires people not to discriminate against folks based on their gender identity. That's the law we passed in New York City, and NYU Langone or Mount Sinai or nobody else can break it, but we have to enforce it. Then the city itself, through health and hospitals, can do a lot more. I want to tell you for 30 seconds about this independent authority I want to create. Health and hospitals, $4 billion budget. About $1 billion of that is federal Medicaid funding. We spend about $100 million on gender-affirming care, abortion, contraception. We should take that and put it in an independent authority funded only with city, state, and private funds so that H&H can continue to get that Medicaid funding, provide the broader set of services, and we can both protect and expand the gender-affirming and reproductive care that New Yorkers need.
Yeah.
So Brad Lander really has the policy and the institutional knowledge that is so valuable in order to understand how to maneuver local government and tying it in with federal government, right? And even the state. So I give Comptroller Brad Lander a lot of credit for really trying to convey how much he knows and how much that can benefit the LGBTQIA plus community. And this will become very important in some of those critical fights where if you think about how do we get things done, I truly believe Brad Lander knows how to get those things done. And that isn't to say that Michael Blake and Adrienne Adams wouldn't, right? They also show that they have strong convictions in terms of supporting the queer community and making sure that they can deliver. I think my one note being is between Michael Blake and Adrienne Adams, from my experience being in the room as they answered questions, Michael Blake was better at tying in queer issues into his responses. If you hear what he's talking about, he not only makes an effort anchoring public safety in his answers, but he also really ties in like trans visibility and making sure that the NYPD is held accountable specifically for gender-affirming care and making sure that we protect trans New Yorkers and all New Yorkers. So I think it's great that he was able to weave that in throughout his answers to show, that he understands the issues, but also who he's speaking to. Contrast that with City Council Speaker Adrienne Adams. Again, probably the funniest, most engaging candidate on the stage, but a lot of her answers were very general, right? Very broad. Now, when you're in a room with a group called Queers for Action, right, one would assume your talking points will be about queers and action. So, not trying to be hypercritical here, but when you listen to her responses, she wasn't able to thoroughly tie in the policy ideas. Now, granted, she did speak about holding cops accountable, which is great, but how does that relate to LGBTQIA plus New Yorkers? She spoke about, reaffirming healthcare, but what about gender-affirming care? There are some of those answers, I don't want to say they're weak, I just want to say they weren't as maybe detailed or policy focused and didn't necessarily weave in the same level of connection that I think Brad Lander was able to do and Michael Blake was able to do. Now, I'm only talking about those three because those three were in the same group in the first half. So please check out the forum. It's on YouTube. I can provide the link so you can make the assessment for yourselves. But out of those three, I think they all did a wonderful job. Improvements could be made, sure. But one thing I do want to call out is that all three of those candidates, and this is something Peppermint called out in the event, she gently encouraged Brad Lander, Adrienne Adams, and Michael Blake to include an LGBTQIA plus policy platform on their campaign websites. As of May 31st, now context here, Pride Month begins June 1st, so the fact that none of them had an LGBTQIA plus platform on their websites before Pride Month, as a member of the LGBTQIA plus community, I don't think it's the end of the world to not have a policy platform, but it does signal to me that, our community was not prioritized. And the fact that, we know that our community is under attack, even worse that Democrats at the national level, right? We saw VP Harris, no members of the trans community were on stage at the DNC. Gavin Newsom, on his podcast with Charlie Kirk saying how, he agrees that trans people shouldn't be in sports. And then even former Governor Cuomo saying like Democrats lost the election because they spent too much time on trans rights and bathrooms. So it's like when you have like these prominent Democratic figures, really throwing the trans community under the bus and not prioritizing, queer rights, it says a lot about the direction of the Democratic Party. So it's very important to have these forums and have this participation and reaffirm that, no, our rights do matter. Our community does have issues that need to be addressed. And we will, lend our support to candidates who are looking to earn our vote. So like Cuomo wasn't even at the forum. So don't rank him. Don't vote for him. Waste of everyone's time if he's not even going to talk to our community. So end of the day, right? Make sure that, Brad Lander, Adrienne Adams, Michael Blake, consider ranking them, consider voting them. I will be ranking Brad Lander and Adrienne Adams. But with that said, I do encourage them to, not only include more LGBTQIA plus policy, especially Adrienne Adams to include more, but for all of them to include a section on their website. That way, when, queer New Yorkers are Googling who to vote for and there's no policy platform on their website, that might make or break their rank. So again, it's important. And these are like, gender affirming care could be life or death for some people. So I really encourage everyone, especially of the candidates, to really put that on their website and, really encourage everyone to do your research and really think about who to be voting for in this mayoral primary. Now, the second group, this was the more interesting half of the forum. Again, Queers for Action separated the candidates into two separate groups. Now, the second group, as a reminder, included Zohran Mamdani, Jessica Ramos, and Scott Stringer. Now, for the sake of this podcast, right, I have full creative control. So with that said, I will not be discussing Scott Stringer, considering he has very real and credible allegations against him from the last mayoral primary. With that said, not going to be wasting my time on that. So lo and behold, let's just focus on Jessica Ramos and Zohran Mamdani. So even though there were three candidates on stage, we're going to focus on the two. So with that said, I was very interested to hear what Zohran and Ramos had to say, because I've supported both of them in the past for their campaigns running for state legislature. And, I'll give Jessica Ramos credit at the beginning of the forum. She did actually spot me in the audience, gave her a thumbs up. So with that said, it was nice to see that she was able to make the connection. And then from that, her opening remarks included how some people in the room have even supported my campaign for state senate, which is true. In the past, throughout my organizing, I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to organize and co-host an event for Jessica Ramos when she was running for state senator in 2018. So from there, I was able to, it was a fun event at Hombres Lounge in Jackson Heights, decent turnout. And it was a fun event, right? And this is when she was taking on the IDC, specifically Jose Peralta, who was a member of the IDC, and she wound up winning that election, right? And to be fair, like Jessica Ramos has always been a good ally for the queer community. And I think that definitely showed in her answers. So I give her a lot of credit for that. Now with Zohran, also very near and dear to my heart. I supported his campaign for state assembly in 2020, not only between volunteering and making sure I was knocking doors, getting the word out as much as I could, but even more so, when I ran for party office as district leader, same year, I'll never forget, he actually did come to my launch event at Albatross Gay Bar in Astoria. I had 3 guest speakers. Zohran was one of them, and he was very gracious enough to come and support my campaign. Having someone show up and lend their support in a gay bar, just meant the world at the time. So, when people, see him as someone with conviction and courage, I can 100% vouch that he has that for me on a personal level. And even during that time, he was so supportive and encouraging. Even after I wound up not making the ballot, he was just so nice and sweet about it, where, it was like really great to have that sense of just humanity, but maybe even just being cool about it. And I love that. So again, just the personal connection, I feel like just gives me that. It's one of those memories that I just won't forget, where it just makes me realize how much some of these candidates are still people at the end of the day. And if they're truly honest and authentic about, supporting you, or even just you as a voter, right? Like it just makes such a difference. So yeah, I'm really, Zohran's my number 1 candidate, ranking him first. I mean, no surprise. I've said that in the past throughout this election on the last episode of the podcast too. But yeah, Zohran's the real deal. Point blank. Can't beat it. So with that said, I think Brad Lander had a really good response in terms of how he would offer a solution to healthcare, especially impacting the LGBTQIA plus community. But I also wanted to share how Zohran answered the question and how Jessica Ramos answered the question. Before I share the clips, wanted you to think about, what speaks to you and what part of their answers may be resonating more than others, right? Hey, I think both of them had good answers, right? I think that's fair to say. Objectively speaking, I think good policy ideas deserve to be celebrated. So let's roll the clip, and I'll have you watch Jessica Ramos, her answer to the healthcare question first.
Senator Ramos?
There are a lot of healthcare issues inside and outside of the LGBTQIA plus community. I actually have a large population of seniors who are aging with HIV and AIDS who are often forgotten. And I have done my best to continue to advocate for them as their senator, and would do so as mayor, making sure that, yes, we're penalizing those who are discriminating against human beings, because healthcare is a human right. I also want to continue to be one of the loudest voices for the New York Health Act and single payer care here in New York City and New York State. But more than that, we need our city hospitals to get real. We have to have our serious training, because I get the complaints of doctors and nurses to be educated in dealing with these maladies and the people who are suffering from them. I want to build a gender-affirming care municipal fund so that there's no more insurance company gatekeeping, because the commodification of our healthcare has to end.
I think that's something that all of you should adopt.
Now, what I loved most about her response was her idea for a municipal fund that would circumvent private insurance, because the gatekeeping with health insurance is insane. And you probably have experience with this as a listener or viewer, because, health insurance can be so tricky to navigate. But but also like sticklers about what services and procedures they'll cover and which ones they'll deny claims for. And especially if you're a trans New Yorker, like how can you get the gender affirming care you need when most of these companies aren't supporting, the care that you actually need to improve your lives. So I think it's great that she has an idea like that, right? I truly support it. I think, and then Peppermint even makes the comment saying that policy should be adopted by all the campaigns. So I would encourage all the campaigns to adopt a municipal fund specifically for trans New Yorkers or those looking for gender affirming care. Because again, the healthcare system in this country is so profit driven, capitalistic, and it's not necessarily producing the results that could, save lives. So that's that on that. So now let's hear from Zohran and see how he answered the question.
We'll start with Mr. Mamdani.
As you said, Andrew Cuomo's treasurer was a part of the attempt to defeat Prop 1. And we have to remember that because it's not just Donald Trump. And when NYU Langone made that decision to preemptively comply with an illegal executive order, they did so in part because they think of the federal government and Republican mega donors as the ones who have built that hospital, the ones whose names are in the wings of that hospital. But the truth is the city is one of the biggest donors to NYU Langone because we exempt them from a single dollar of property taxes. And what I said then is if you want to violate city and state law, then we have to explore whether you deserve these kinds of exemptions. And it's important. It's important that we do so because too often we misunderstand power as something that is only technical, when in fact power is also the use of the leverage that a $115 billion budget provides you. And that's why, as part of our LGBTQIA plus platform, we have put forward not just to create the office that I spoke about, but also to make this city a sanctuary city for queer and trans New Yorkers and those fleeing in refuge, and finally to step up for gender-affirming care and ensure we have that replacement funding ready if the federal government does cut it.
Zohran's answer resonated with me the most. Doesn't mean it's the best, right? Because everyone can have a different answer that resonates with them better. For me, it resonated the way I had hoped for. Because if you notice, he focused on a progressive economic agenda. Or no, how do I say this? I really appreciated Zohran's answer because he came from a progressive economic perspective, right? And tying it in locally to New York City. So the issue with NYU Langone, again, they preemptively were stating that they would not support gender-affirming care. So because of that, right, how would Zohran push back as mayor? First tying in how NYU Langone is funded by Republican donors, but also how if they are meant to provide service to all New Yorkers, then what they're doing is not okay. So how can we hold them accountable? His solution is looking for a creative solution in terms of the property tax exemptions. Now, property tax doesn't directly impact gender affirming care, but it does hold them accountable, saying, hey, if you're not going to provide the care that trans New Yorkers or any New Yorker for gender affirming care needs, then you shouldn't be getting away with just, the tax exemptions where you need to be paying your fair share to hopefully encourage them to then provide the care, right? So I think to his point of tying in the city budget, right? How can we leverage the budget to, force some of these policy decisions to be made? Because while Zohran may not have the policy and institutional knowledge like Brad Lander has, he does have the political will, very much like Bernie Sanders has, right? So I appreciated how Zohran would be interested in using political leverage to get the desired results that is needed. Now, while most voters probably don't think of politics like that, they might not necessarily be keen to that strategy. We can say this is what makes a great politician, especially when they execute that flawlessly, right? Like, past mayors have done that successfully. There are ways to leverage the institutional powers or agencies or committees or even budget budgetary prowess, let's say, in order to deliver for New Yorkers. So I give Zohran credit for that, right? The idea that we can really start putting the pressure not only on these institutions, but also sending a message that we are going to push back as New Yorkers. And to be frank, while a lot of the answers from the candidates were good, Zohran's was a really great example of how we can push back against the Trump administration as well, right? I think with all of the answers given from all the candidates at the forum, I think it's important to remember how you are speaking to a room of LGBTQIA plus New Yorkers, so, addressing their needs is key. But as we know, the queer community is also very much concerned with Trump 2.0 and how the administration has been attacking the community. So to have pushback as the largest city in America to show the Trump administration that we mean business, right? I would definitely encourage everyone to listen to their answers and solutions amongst the candidates and get a sense of who you think is offering the solutions or the vision that could really push back and resist, or at least deliver for New Yorkers while also protecting us from the Trump administration. So the last thing I'll say about the forum is that, I really did enjoy watching all the candidates who participated talk about the issues, right? Some had more general responses, some were more policy focused, some were more articulating a vision. And these are all different styles and ways to communicate to the community. Some are better than others objectively, that's safe to say. But at the end of the day, please check out the Queers for Action forum if you can. Highly recommend it. I think you'll learn a lot. It speaks to how the candidates are communicating about the issues, but also just about what policy ideas can hopefully get implemented in the next administration. So please check out the Queers for Action forum. It's on YouTube. And, make sure you're thinking about who you're ranking. Maybe the forum will change your rank, right? I'll be honest, I was kind of thinking about, my number 5 rank, I might change. I might replace one candidate for another. I don't know yet. I heard some good things from the forum. But yeah, as of now, I said in the last podcast episode, nothing has changed. Zohran is still my number 1 candidate I will be ranking. I highly encourage you to do the same. My top 3 include Adrienne Adams at Bradlander. So, take that what you will. But I definitely think that they are definitely worth considering for your rank. And I really hope that, hey, if any of those 3 get to be mayor, they will do a phenomenal job. I just know they will. I heard it. I see it, right? And I really think any of those 3 would do wonders compared to the current administration. So at the end of the day, happy Pride. We're here, we're queer, and we are ready to take action. So don't forget, vote in the mayoral primary. Early voting starts June 14th. Election day is June 24th. And that's our show. Thank you so much for tuning in to Not Suitable for Democracy. If you like what you heard and want to learn more, then make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. If you want to follow along for more, then make sure to follow on Instagram at NSFD_pod. If by any chance you're a registered voter in New York City, early voting starts June 14th and election day is June 24th. It is Pride Month, but at the end of the day, all of these issues matter to all New Yorkers. So please make sure to make your voice heard, because remember, democracy is not suitable without you.